Yo, or more so, hey there guys, it's Metro, and welcome to the continuation of the DPS spec tier list. We've been doing this now with these major videos that we've been making where I kind of don't want to pollute the comment section with a bunch of rebuttals to other people. So I figured out, last couple times that we've done something like this, the best way to do it is just let them kind of populate themselves, let people put their own opinions without me interfering, and then I will reply in bulk to these. And it's actually been pretty fun. This one's a pretty late arrival here because it didn't really do very well this time, unfortunately. It's been almost a full month, so about twice as long as it was for the last video, the tank one that is. When we did the tank one, it had 25k views after 3 weeks, and this one has only 12k views after about almost 4 weeks, so more like 5 weeks, I guess. So yeah, not great. I'm kind of disappointed. But anyway, there's still plenty of comments, 78 comments. Some of them are me, but either way, this is what we're going to do. We're going to read through every single comment. I'm going to give a detailed reply to every single person. So hopefully some of these people will be watching this, but maybe not. Either way, this was actually, even though it didn't get many views, it actually did better than I expected to in terms of popularity. I figured most people would have some vehement disagreement, but a lot of people were kind of on the same page a lot. So we'll see what the comment section has to offer. Most of these comments I've never read before, so I posted a detailed breakdown. If you guys haven't seen this yet, I would definitely recommend checking it out. It is obviously got pretty much every single thing that you could break it down upon. I would probably change some of these things, but for the most part, yeah, this is, I could nitpick forever, right? It's never going to end. So, all right, so let's get started here. All right, Coda E. Am I the only one who's never heard someone say bombkin? I always heard it pronounced bombkin, lol. You're probably not the only one. I'm sure there's deaf people out there who have never heard that. But yeah, probably very few people don't know it's pronounced bombkin. So let's keep moving. Thomas Casa. How has Feral worse DPS than Bombkin? Literally can bring the numbers as Bombkins as a Feral if played well. Hashtag clueless. That's ironic. Anyway, yeah. So, we're going to see a little bit of this. People debating whether or not Bombkin should be top tier. This guy's taking a bit of a different route towards it, kind of surprising defending Feral. I guess we're going to see a couple of those maybe. But, yeah, I mean, even if... So, the reason that most people are debating about Bombkit is because it's apparently not got very good DPS. I don't know. In my experience, it does have very good DPS. I don't know what people are seeing. I think they're looking way too much at pad AoE with Reaping, and I think they're not giving nearly enough credit to single target because from what I've seen, Bombkit has incredibly good single target DPS. Feral does not. And, Feral's, maybe it's AoE, especially since it's a lot of bleeds. It can do pretty good AoE on Reaping, but it's got no burst CDs. That's the problem. That's why Feral is just worse than Bombkin because it has no burst. Bombkin has incredible burst. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you should spell check or whatever. Reread your post before you post it so you don't look like an idiot. But regardless, that would be my answer. Even if maybe mathematically they're equal in terms of DPS output, which I've not seen evidence of, I do still feel like Bombkin is better because it brings burst DPS, and Feral's mostly just basically sustain AoE, and that's not necessarily useful. So, okay, Absinthe, he's posted a very long, detailed comment, but wanted me to read it for a while, so let's give him the time. It's actually not that long. All right, awesome video. I really like the delivery and structure of this video. 10 out of 10. I'm glad we agree. I'll preface my next words with the fact that my main is an Elemental Shaman, so please forgive a possible bias. That's fine. Elemental Shaman should be above Bombkin. Here are my reasons. I believe you forgot to mention Bloodlust for Elemental. Yeah, I might have. It was getting so long. I was trying to cut as many quarters as possible. Obviously, Bloodlust is part of Elemental, and I'm very aware that it has that. You mentioned that Solar Beam was extremely useful for caster-heavy packs and reaps. Well, I agree with you. The knockback from Earthquake, or the knockdown, I assume he means, not only has a larger radius, but it happens more frequently than 1 minute. That's true. It's not a silence, but it does stop them from casting. It doesn't actually lock them out. But I do, the knockdown on Earthquake is incredibly powerful. But Solar Beam is definitely better for actually interrupting many mobs at once. So I still think Solar Beam's niche is incredibly carved. You mentioned the potency of Earth Elemental, but did not include that with Primal Elementalist. Build I always run. You not only can move the Elemental, but gain access to a 4-second stun. I did not know you can gain access to a 4-second stun. Did not know that, actually. 40% damage reduction. I did know, and I didn't consider it because there's just too many variables there if people are taking the talent or not. But obviously, you're probably not using that ability just to get the defensive out of it. Maybe you are, but that doesn't seem right. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I mentioned Primal Elementalist. I don't know. Maybe I didn't. Been a little too long to remember that, but very aware of it. 4, I agree. In a world of mages with Blink, Ellie is lower on metaphorical totem pole, but Azerite trait Ignis Potential, one of my most potent abilities, proc to instant cast very frequently, and when movement is required, that proc is not available. Frost Shock is not a big DPS loss, considering it's an instant cast. It's almost as powerful as Lightning Bolt. Yeah, Frost Shock is definitely really good filler. That's probably something that I should have made more clear in the video. Even though they have among the worst mobility, they do actually have pretty good mobility if you are willing to use Frost Shock a lot. And there's, I guess, talents and situations where it could be even stronger than normal. But either way, like if you're trying to properly cast through the rotation, they have pretty bad utility. Or I'm sorry, pretty bad mobility. But, you know, even if Ignis Potential, you know, it's only one trait is going to maximize that. So, yeah, I guess you can, you know, get a lot of procs. I don't necessarily see it so often that I would call them good at mobility. But, yeah, I mean, they're certainly not going to be better than, like, Hunter or Mage, right? One or the other. So, at best, they're mid-tier mobility. I don't know. I can't imagine how they'd be better than that. Even better than Bombkin, it's hard to believe, right? Because Bombkin has so many actual instants that are part of their rotation. Anyway, I do not believe you mentioned Cleanse Spirit. Sorry, I'm wrong. Sorry if I'm wrong or what. I probably didn't, but again, there's just so many things, you know, I couldn't list them all. I'm definitely aware that they can cleanse. Although there's not a lot of times that you want to cleanse as it's a curse, right? So there's not a huge amount of usage of it. Anyway, Ancestral Guidance is still very relevant. I'll put it into perspective. On a 2-minute cooldown, it divides 25% of my damage into healing up to 3 allies for 10 seconds. Math is not my strong suit, but if I do 20k DPS during 10 seconds, that's about 65k healing for each ally. If that's right, that's right. Either way, I definitely, it's not what it used to be, right? I think everybody agrees, but it's still pretty good. And I'm glad to see, you know, an actual elemental shaman come to the defense of this spell, because I've been talking about this spell for a while now, even in Legion, and people are like, nah, that's useless. Doesn't heal at all. So if this is good, then this basically, you know, people agree that this is Ancestral Guidance is good. Then people should agree that, you know, the shaman, or I'm sorry, the Shadow Priest one is good too. So that's good. That's good to see that. Anyway, raw damage output. Elemental has the best single target damage in the game, and top 3 AoE damage with ability to burst very often. Since you took data from Radar Warcraft logs, 3 of the top 5 Mythic Plus have an Elemental Shaman, and +1 ranked DPS on Warcraft logs is Ellie. So I didn't know, I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't typically say that Ellie is the best single target damage dealer in 5-mans. But I'm very aware of their actual damage output. It is high, and it doesn't look like it's the highest in the game, but I definitely think it's extremely good. And yeah, I don't know anything about 3 out of the top 5 Mythic Plus having an Ellie Shaman. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. This doesn't really have much to do with my actual video or my opinions on it, but yeah. Raw output, definitely a strength for Ellie. Unfortunately, the big problem with Ellie, and the reason that they're below Bombkin, is because they have, you know, just worse mobility, and their defense is frankly really bad. So you didn't mention that, I guess. I was kind of hoping to hear something about the defense of Ellie, because I do feel like their defense is pretty much married to dying and resurrecting, and you kind of don't use that to do that very often. You use that a lot for skips, or maybe even, you know, something else, but I don't know, comparing pretty much most range to Ellie, they have a very bad defensive kit, and they're at best mid-tier for mobility. So you're really just relying on pure damage and pure utility, which they do extremely well, the best of a lot of classes. And that's why they're number 4 overall, right? I'm pretty sure that's why I had them. That's why they're tier 2, right? But, you know, to be tier 1, you have to do all of those things well, and that's what Bombkin does. It may not do better damage, and arguably doesn't have better utility. I mean, Ellie's Shaman's utility is extremely wide, so it's hard to say that anybody has better utility than Ellie. But I do think what Bombkin has is extremely valuable, and it's at least number 2, if not number 1, on range. I could see it being number 2 to Ellie. You know, that's probably what I would have said when I made the video as well. And of course, the DPS may be a sore spot, but you know, it's really, I don't know, it's not as bad as people think it is. So I think Bombkin is just way better, way more well-rounded, and that's why I would have them at number 3, especially because you know, Battle Res is so useful. Bloodlust is useful too, but I think Battle Res is just better, because it's a lot harder to get Battle Res going if you don't have a Shaman, or if you don't have somebody who could bring it. Let's put it that way. Anyway, Nigel Mills says, I saw Havoc above Rogue and left. Bad list. Poor criteria. You should have continued watching. You would have saw the reply where I asked people to actually make the tier list if they disagree, but that's obviously too much to ask. In fact, I think I actually replied to that. Yeah, I said, let's hear yours then. It'll probably take more than 5 minutes of inspection, so maybe not your cup of tea. It's pretty embarrassing when you say something like this, right? Like if you're literally going to look at the first 5 minutes of the video and then be like, this whole list is bad because of that. I mean, you're basically not capable of critical thought, so I don't have much interest in talking to you. Anyway, this guy, damn that shit, has actually done what I asked him to do, so that's good. Let's read it. All right, I'm going to go ahead. I'm no Mythic Plus God. God claims he's 2.8k rating at the moment, but I do know quite a lot about the current meta. And don't forget, this is not about the current meta. This is my opinion on the tier list of DPS specs in 5-man. So anyway, tier 1 would be Rogue, Demon Hunter, Shaman. Rogue for the damage, Shroud, and so more. I totally agree. Rogue's damage is definitely overrated, but Shroud is a top tier utility when it's needed. A lot of dungeons it's not needed. That's why Rogue is number 2, because Demon Hunter, their utility and their bulk and their mobility and their defense and offense, everything, always needed. 100% of the time. Demon Hunter is just way more applicable to dungeons. That's why they're number 1. Anyway, Demon Hunter for bulk, magic, defense, and good damage. Yep. Shaman for way more utility than you seem to think they have, even considering their lack of defenses. Well, you can't discount the lack of defenses, and I definitely am 100% aware that they have the most utility of any class in the game. So, yeah, I don't know why you would say that. Anyway, tier 2 would be Mage, Hunter, Monk, Bombkin. Mage and Hunter are... So you'd have Mage and Hunter above Bombkin. That's hard to believe. Mage and Hunter are close in utility and should be chosen depending if you use a Demon Hunter or a Monk next to the Rogue. Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because Hunter will benefit more from a Monk, and Mage will benefit more from a Demon Hunter, so that's interesting. Bombkin have good utility, but sadly their AoE damage is lacking far behind at the moment. Yeah, I've seen a couple people say this, but I mean, AoE damage, I feel like AoE damage is really overrated this season. People are way too circle jerking, reaping AoE cleave, and it's just not good. I don't like that at all. It's making because right now I find the hardest part about keys is bosses. Trash is pretty easy at this point, no matter what. Even on really hard fortified weeks, it's just the bosses still seem to be the hard part of most dungeons that I do. So I don't know. I don't feel like you need a big, huge AoE. And obviously Bombkin's not the best at AoE, but they're definitely not, I wouldn't say, at least in my experience, they're not lacking far behind, quote unquote. Pretty much just utility, so they're definitely more in utility, right? Monk have good damage and loads of utility, plus the physical debuff. Yep, Monk's, like I said, Monk's like the baseline, right? It's like everybody above Monk is extremely good, everybody below Monk is just bad, you know what I mean? That's the way to look at it. Monk is the perfect middle ground there, so Monk should be considered higher with the current meta. Yeah, so again, not about the meta. This has nothing to do with meta. I would never consider a niche thing like that where, you know, the tippy top people are trying to stack melee damage and that makes Monk mandatory. Would never consider that for my tier list. There's nothing to do with me anyway, so why would that be a part of my opinion? Okay, anyway, tier 3 would be Shadow Priest. So you're saying DK, Ret all the way down here, and Enhance. Shadow Priest does really good damage on higher keys where ramp up time doesn't matter too much. Yeah, they do good damage, but everything else they fucking blow at. I wouldn't say they have decent bulk. I guess they have bulk that's all right, but yeah, their bulk being tied to, it's just so awkward. The way they have their mobility, their bulk, and their utility are all tied to such awkward spells. I just can't have much respect for the spec. Anyway, DK does massive damage if you play around it, but takes too much effort to utilize. Yep, I definitely agree with that. Ret does good damage, but apart from that, they don't really offer much to the group. Definitely, I mean, vehemently disagree with that. People just don't know how good Word of Glory is. And I think it's because, you know, I do a lot more pugging than probably if you're 2.8k, you're obviously not pugging, right? So it's almost like, you know, like you're kind of betraying yourself saying like that, because how many of these specs do you actually run with? You probably run with mostly people that you know, and most of those people are probably not playing a lot of these specs. But anyway, yeah, I mean, Bop, just the whole slew of survival-oriented utility is extremely strong from a DPS slot. So anyway, Enhance works great for priority damage. It does have, as you say, a worse version utility Ellie, but that is still great. Yep. Yeah, they're pretty good. I wouldn't say they're tier 3, but, you know, Enhance can still be okay. It's just worse than Ellie, so that kind of relegates them to tier 4 just because of that. You know, when you can't win a competition with your own class, then you just lose all the time. Anyway, tier 4 would be Warlock. I could understand Warlock being tier 4. They really kind of just they lost their place in the game right now, I feel like, for 5-mans, but they're still very strong when you play them well. Feral above Warrior, that's sad. I mean, Warrior, I could totally understand. I could totally believe that Warrior is the worst spec in the game, worst class in the game right now, because they just have, besides offense, they have nothing, right? Like, it's just really weird, isn't it? But again, I feel like just because Feral and Enhance cannot win competitions with their own spec, then they are by default the worst. Warlock does have some utility in Gate or the Imp to Spell, but doesn't have much else. That's true. Their utility is really odd. It does decent damage. I think it does definitely better than decent damage. Extremely good damage still. All three specs can do really good. So that's useful, but again, that's why they're mid-tier. Feral can't say too much about them. Haven't seen a good one yet. Glad we agree. Warrior does decent damage, but they have no utility yet. So Warrior is definitely better damage than Feral, and even though they have no utility, they definitely have better mobility, right? So I don't know. It's just, I don't know. That's the way to look at it. Anyway, amazing video. I appreciate the effort you put into your videos. Mark, thanks a lot. This video, you know, coincidentally took me probably about 60 hours of work. I can't ever really nail down it because I'm not really paying attention. But I had taken an entire day off of work and an entire day off of streaming. So that's at least, that's close to like 15 to 20 hours right there, depending on what I did around that. And I still wasn't even halfway done with that. So I'm thinking it's at least, 40 hours, but it probably was closer to 60 because there's a lot of times where I was kind of working on it, but I wasn't really like fully focused on it. So I don't know. All right, so this guy, Alexander Grun, says, Shadow 20 to 30k HPS while I use Vampiric Embrace on a big pole. That's cool. I've never seen that. I definitely, again, it's going to be hard to convince me that it's better than Word of Glory. I've seen ridiculous things with Word of Glory, and the CD is obviously much more prohibitive. So Vampiric Embrace is good. It's decent utility. It's not nearly as good as most other utility spells in the game, but I am glad to see that it has some value. At least other people are seeing that, so... Anyway, as a Shadow Priest main, this video makes me sad, says Judge. You shouldn't be sad, frankly. Shadow Priest is actually in a great spot right now. I think I properly acknowledge that by making them tier 3 instead of tier 4 for the first time ever. This is definitely the first time that Shadow Priest has ever been a viable pick in 5-mans. Season 2, and maybe Season 1, you could have argued it as well, but really, all throughout Legion, all through MoP and WoD challenge modes, they were a non-viable pick. They were absolutely useless. They had the worst utility by far, they had the worst mobility, worst defense, and they had the worst type of offense, so they're finally good. They're finally actually good. It's just, they still, they're held back so heavily by everything other than their damage. Lolly says, try being a Fury Warrior. We have no place in raids or dungeons. I wouldn't say I have no place in raids, but yeah, obviously dungeons, they're in a pickle. Let's put it that way. Okay, John N. As a Warlock main, I agree with this list completely. All right. See, a lot of people just kind of agreed. It's not really, there's not really a lot going on here. So anyway, Natter says, see, this is the video I was looking for. Good job, man. Well, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I'm not going to lie. I was a little disappointed. Spent a long time on this, probably doubled the amount of effort on the tank video. And the tank video got probably about 3 times more popularity. So... whatever. I did, it's just, was bad timing all around, so I can't blame anybody for that, except me. Anyway, Odin, what's up, buddy? I haven't seen you in a while. Where you been, man? Pretty solid list overall. I would put Windwalker Monk over Ret. Yeah, that's another one a lot of people say, but, I just feel like Ret is just way more useful in terms of actual utility. And I think a lot of the reason people are all about Windwalker right now is because of the MDI, and that just has no impact on my opinion. So Rogue over Demon Hunter and Elemental over Balance. So yeah, we kind of already talked about that. I struggle to see how Rogue's better than Demon Hunter. I think people are just really, they're too focused on Shroud. There's just a lot of times you don't need Shroud, right? You know what I mean? Like there's dungeons where you literally have no use for it. You would basically just kind of be, I don't know, you'd be splitting hairs using it at any point into the dungeon. So, and then there's some dungeons that is absolutely mandatory. For those, it's tier 1, number 1. For those that it's not mandatory, I definitely think Demon Hunter just brings a lot more right now. And then, yeah, we talked about Elemental over Balance. I think Balance is ironically just more balanced than Elemental, and that's why they're number 1. That's why they're above at least. And as always, top tier video. I love the detailing and reasoning. Thanks a lot, Odin. I appreciate you saying that. Purple Haze says correct. Correct. What's correct there? You, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, okay. Too nice to be me. That's this guy's name. For the first time, I do agree with the list in overall, which comes while for the first time I'm playing less than before. Smile. Okay. Anyway, the only things I can argue about are the Demon Hunter / Rogue spots, but IMO, it doesn't change much at all. Yeah, it's like I said, I wanted to make it as clear as possible. It's kind of fluid. You know what I mean? Demon Hunter is definitely a top tier pick. And I think Rogue is top tier overall when you need actual Shroud. So anyway, the one thing I do see differently is that Monk is placed below Pally for IMO artificial reasons. In terms of damage, I think they're on par with each other. with a slight edge on the Monk. I can understand Monk being slightly more DPS than Rep Pally, because a lot of Rep Pallies is going to kind of be excess burst. But if you use your CDs well, they're going to do very, very good overall damage. And, you know, while I don't necessarily think padding on, like, you know, reaping or something like that is profitable a lot of times, I think both specs would probably do a lot of that. So it's hard to judge. Anyway, the Pally kit is more reactive with Freedom, Bop, Land Hands, and Wog, while the Monk does bring proactive CC to the party that shapes the way you play the dungeon. There's no reason to value the reactive parts higher than the proactive ones, because you need mistakes or situations that can't be managed by the healer or tank first to get any value of the reactive kit. I don't think you're trying to look at these like if they're two sides of the same coin. They're just not, right? The Monk doesn't have anywhere near the utility that Rep Pally has. It really doesn't. It's not in anywhere close. Really, all they have is Ring, and I don't know what else you would consider proactive CC. I don't know what you mean. I guess you're talking about AoE stun, which is good, but you know, there's a lot of AoE stuns in the game. But yeah, Word of Glory, Land Hands, Bop, these things are ridiculously strong right now in 5-mans, and I'm surprised to see so many people don't realize it. You're talking about, like, you know, a situation that can't be managed by the healer or the tank. I guess I can understand that. It's like you might just be using Word of Glory and wasting the tank's or the healer's mana or resources. But for what I do, it's never that way. Like, I feel like if I don't do it, that there's going to be deaths. I've saved countless lives on stream. I mean, I just did it this week. I saved like 3 or 4 people in the keys we did with Land Hands and Word of Glory. It's just ridiculous how strong they are. It's unbelievable how strong they are. So, I don't know. I think people just don't realize how good they are. Or they only look at the tip top, which obviously you're not going to need help from a damage dealer. You know what I mean? So anyway, the rest of the video is really spot on with what we see in game right now. So good job on this nice video. Sweet. Just to be clear, it's nothing to do with what we see in game right now. It's just my opinions. So I'm glad that you have your own opinions. Anyway, Brandon Strauss says, great video. I really appreciate living out bias, which I unfortunately sometimes take into consideration when choosing groups. As a tank, I love having Ellie Shaman over Rep Pally, but mainly because I tend to run into Pally players that use that massive burst on Reaping packs before any aggro is ever established, therefore leaving them quickly melted by Reaping waves. So that is a problem, but you know, that's actually not a problem for Rep because you can just immune twice different ways. On the other hand, I've had mostly good luck with Ellie Shamans that utilize their kit well, and I consider Rocky to be an all-star of the Reaping affix, which should catapult Ellie Shaman over Ret into Tier 1. But yeah, so I mean, Rock Ellie is really, really, really good for Reaping. But I don't know. I used to believe that it was really mandatory as well, but it's like, it kind of doesn't matter. Reaping is just, I don't know. They fucked up with Reaping. Just plain and simple. It's just not very difficult. So I love Rocky for that because it does make Reaping even easier. But to be honest, even if damage dealers have threat on Reap, they're probably still going to be all right. Anyway, great work, Metro. Thanks for putting in all the effort. Brandon, I appreciate you saying that. Okay, Sap. Tier 1, number 1 overall is Fury. Wait. No. Nope. X-Bomb actually says Tier 1, number 1 overall is X-Bomb. That's, yeah, not necessarily specifically true, but X-Bomb plays a Demon Hunter, and he's a Demon Hunter Tier 1, number 1, so that's right. Okay, Merrick K says Cries in Survival Hunter. I don't think that's possible, but if you're playing a Survival Hunter and you're disappointed, I think it is probably not my fault. I don't know what to tell you. Survival is just one of those specs. It's like, why? Anyway, okay, Phoenix Phillip. Literally every AoE stun is the best of the game at the same time. What? So I don't know if what he means by this. I think what he probably means is that I kind of overused the word like the best for some of these things. I kind of like, I've been trying to get better at this throughout these tier lists where I use like superlatives that kind of indicate finality in the tier list. Like this is the best or this is absurdly good. You know, things that are like really strong wording, but it's kind of true. Like, I don't know, like I don't know where I said it. So I don't know why. This might not even be why he's saying it, but if he's saying it because I use those types of languages for multiple stuns, then it's like, I don't know what to tell you. I apologize. I mean, there's one extremely good range stun, and that's Shaman, it's just better than Warlocks. And there's one extremely good melee stun, and that is Monk, just better than Demon Hunter, etc. So that's the way I look at it. But if he's saying that they are not different enough, like the other option is that he's saying this because they're all the exact same, so it doesn't matter which one is which. That could be the reason he's saying it as well. If he's saying that, then I don't believe that's true. I assume he's just saying that because I messed up the language of whatever I said, so. Oh, well. Anyway, Greg, what's up, buddy? I, too, enjoyed topping healing charts with Word of Glory. Me, too. It's actually really fun, and it feels like you're really bringing a lot of value to the group. So, yeah, I think Ret is really underrated, honestly, by a lot of people, and I'm surprised by it. Anyway, Keister says, Hunter Hero is unfortunately tied to pet family. Spirit Shock, Dispel, and others are available across all families. Ferocity, Tenacity, and Cunning. However, BM Spirit Beast have the Dispel, a solid single target heal, and our Tenacity. The hero is only available to Ferocity pets, meaning before pulls, Hunter must preemptively dismiss their Tenacity Spirit Beast and then summon a Ferocity pet that has the ability to purge/soothe. This takes about 4 seconds to do, then they will dismiss after the fight and summon the Spirit Beast again. So Mage, Shaman, and Drums are just a far less burdensome use of heroes than Hunters. Okay, so first of all, I don't know if this is true. I'm pretty sure I've seen Hunters have one pet out the entire dungeon and Dispel and Lust at the same time, but I don't know anything about that, so maybe you're right. But, I mean, that's why you do it out of combat, right? Like, I don't really look at this as a problem, but I guess it is kind of a problem, and it should just make Hunters battle res, or I'm sorry, they don't have battle res anymore. It should just make Hunters Bloodlust worse than the other specs, which is kind of reflected in the tier list because I have Hunter's utility, even though it's extremely wide, to be very poor. So, yeah, I guess that's just further evidence, even if I didn't originally take that into account. So, anyway, edit very good video and agree very much. I play a Hunter, doing keys at 17 and up, and it just seems middle of the pack and can always bring them just harder to justify over ones you've listed before. Yeah, I definitely think Hunter is at best mid-tier. Like, they're definitely not tier 2. You know what I mean? Like they're struggling for a spot right now in ranged, and the ranged are already struggling for spots, so not ideal. Okay, John Doe. I play Havoc well north of 2k IO. Assassination Rogue have considerably higher damage potential than I do, especially for AoE with Echoing Blades. So that's actually, we talked about this on live stream, right? The Echoing Blades thing, I'm pretty sure that's the Azerite trait. You're kind of baiting yourself into then funneling all AoE damage, right? Which Assassination, if you ask me, the best thing that they can do is that they do single target damage. So I don't really understand why everybody's like just super circling on AoE damage right now. But yeah, I mean, I guess Rogue does theoretically more damage than Havoc Demon Hunter, but that's about all they do better, in my opinion. So anyway, Outlaw is solid too, but Assassination just brings fire with 3x Echoing Blades. Yeah, I'm sure they do. They also can soak a great deal of mechanics and help clearing things up, such as Spiders and Yasma, which Demon Hunters can do too, right? They really pull ahead in higher keys. Okay, I mean, I'll take your word for it. I don't know. I just think Demon Hunter is way better at more things. Like, Rogue is really good at some things, like extremely good at some things, but their utility is kind of thin and it's kind of niche. Without Shroud or, you know, like opening the gates in Toldagor, they don't really bring any utility whatsoever other than tricks of the trade, which really isn't really needed. And I definitely think their defense and mobility are just worse than Demon Hunter. So even if their offense was like twice as good as Demon Hunter, which is definitely not, it would still be below Demon Hunter, unless you need Shroud, right? So we talked about this a lot. Anyway, I also agree with you on Ret. Word of Glory is unbelievably powerful. I've had make or break moments in high keys saved by Rep Pallies, including a council fight in 18 King's Rest. That's great. Yeah, a council fight, and this is actually where Rep Pally really shines, because they can bop off the bleed, or they can land hand somebody who has the bleed is dying. This is actually extremely, I'm glad that somebody else recognizes this, because I'm telling you, Rep Pally is really good. I don't know. Anyway. You got to understand this is a guy with barely 1900 IO making guides on Mythic Plus. This is not a guide. So, yeah. Anyway. All right, let's move on. We got a guy named R. Says, nobody even talks about Warlocks in the comment. Yeah, they're kind of out of favor. Maybe now with all the method nonsense, they're going to kind of come back into favor. But ever since Demo got nerfed, I really haven't seen them around much. Axe Daddy Gaming, what's up, buddy? Very well done. I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot. Hans Mafai says, overall, I agree with your list. It's just that I would put the DK in second tier because of the grip. Of course, it's not as good as the damage dealer as it is on a tank, but since the meta shifted towards warrior tanks, I think it gained a lot of value with these pesky gray cast ranged mobs. I'm glad to see somebody else recognizes that Death Grip is the best utility in the game. It's just so much better on a tank than as a Death Knight DPS that I struggle to believe it. Anyway, another point I would make is that the engineering combat res is strong on paladins and especially hunters, since they got immunities and can reliably res while ignoring the shit going on around them. Of course, real combat res from druid is still better, but sometimes a druid is your only combat res in the group and dies, so it doesn't hurt. I mean, it's a good thing to have. Obviously, if you could have multiple battle reses from engineering, that's good. But I cannot consider a profession as part of this discussion. You know what I mean? It's one thing to talk about drums and things like that you can just go buy off the auction house, but it's just, you can't really consider this as a main part of utility. It's just not. It can't do that, you know. So obviously, things with bulk are going to be better at using battle res than things without bulk. So either way. All right, hunters can also survive every death skip really reliably and use the combat res item on healers afterwards. That's true, but so can rogues. I don't want to consider this combat res item because I don't feel like it's a reliable thing. Anyway, one thing you should mention on hunters is camouflage. Combined with turtle plus lightfoot potion and feign death, you can do quite a lot of skips you usually couldn't do without sacrificing somebody or shrouding. For example, in a tall, you can pull the last 2 packs in front of Volcon to the side, feign death, and stealth in. For getting out, you can use camo and feign death again. In King's Rest, you can shroud / invispot the last 3 packs at third boss and use hunter pull on the way back. Cool. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of ways to skip a lot of trash. I guess hunter has a little bit more value than I originally gave them credit for. I didn't really consider that. I should have known because we did that a lot in MOP and WAD challenge modes, actually, where hunters would split pull or pull things in general and reset them with the feign death. So I guess I should have remembered that. But realistically, I never see it done, so it doesn't seem like it's being used very often. Anyway, survival is actually quite a strong spec in Mythic Plus and deals nicely burst-heavy AoE DPS. It's just they're a melee, right? It's like, again, it's just like melee on a ranged class that's primarily known for its ranged ability is just never going to win, in my opinion, and especially because there's so many better melee. Anyway, with the second best purge and best anti-enrage in the game, right? But I mean, BM has it too, right? So really strong mobility as survival hunter. I mean, I can't imagine they're better than like monk. Can't imagine they're better than demon hunter, warrior, etc. And their defensive kit is probably only second to that of demon hunters. I highly doubt they're better than Rep Pally, but maybe. I just didn't give any credit to survival, honestly, because I just can't imagine anybody playing survival over BM. So I don't know. There's a flaw. It would be that for sure. Okay. Anyway, Max. It seems like Blizzard's It seems like Blizzard balance specs and decides balancing changes based on overall class performance and representation. Prot warriors are top tier and highly represented, unfortunately leaving arms and fury forgotten at the moment. The same case could be made with feral and bombkins, and resto druids are very strong. That's true. They're pretty well represented, but I don't think feral is unrepresented because the developers aren't interested in it. I think it's just weak compared to bombkin, and it's always going to be. So anyway, on the flip side, Vengeance Demon Hunter are bottom tier and basically see no representation in high-end Mythic Plus or raids for that matter. And due to Demon Hunter only having 2 specs, if Havoc wasn't as strong as it is now, as highly represented, Demon Hunter would basically be a dead spec since their tank spec is, in the eyes of the community, at least bottom tier compared to the other tanks, and they don't have a third spec to fall back on like the other classes. That's true, but I mean, I don't know what your point is. I mean, this is just how the game is, you know? Anyway, I think this method of balancing is broken at its core. It's not a method of balancing. They're not doing this on purpose. This is just what happens when you have classes that are very powerful, specs that are very powerful, and you had some specs in there that are not very powerful. It's just how it's going to go. You're never going to be able to balance Bombkin and Feral equally. One is always going to be better than the other. And in order to make Feral better than Bombkin, it's going to have to be considerably better than Bombkin. Like, it'd have to be like 50% better in all metrics, basically. Because, you know, having that bulk and that the way Bombkin operates, it's just naturally better. So anyway, yes, perhaps at least one spec of most classes will be represented, but it feels like you're only having access to 1/3 of your class, and it forces people into specs and roles they perhaps don't enjoy. I guess it does, but again, I just don't think it's done on purpose, so I don't know. Anyway, okay, he's got more. Oh, and I would put rogues over demon hunters. Both are amazing for Mythic Plus. Both bring amazing, reliable AoE bursts and decent single target damage, and rogue's unexpected bulk is comparable to demon hunter's outright bulk. Definitely don't agree there. Why I put rogues above demon hunter is the fact that Shroud is the most efficient utility in the game, as in the single piece of utility that saves the most time in a dungeon run. That's true. When it's needed, it definitely does that. And it's like I said, I don't know. I wish I could make like a 1A, because it's like clearly rogue is the best pick overall when you need Shroud, but you know, you just don't need Shroud in every dungeon. Anyway, not only is it a massive time saver, but when skipping packs, the risk of dying is 0, making all other forms of utility essentially useless for that particular part. I don't understand what you mean, but obviously when you're skipping, you're not fighting anything, so that kind of just goes without saying. Anyway, also Cloak is amazing. Not only can it make certain mechanics a non-issue for the rogue, it can also make bosses considerably easier for the entire group, as the third boss of Shrine and the final boss of Ataldazar. Oh, third boss of Shrine. How does that work? Not aware. But anyway, Cloak was actually extremely good in the early days of competitive 5-mans, and it just doesn't feel like it has. Cloak and Vanish, they were like, Rogue was really, really strong. But so was the Priest had this as well. They could, it added a Viz, and Hunter had it as well. And there were basically mechanics would target them, and they would just negate them by doing these things. Those don't really happen anymore. So it's definitely, you know, the history of these spells are in my mind when I'm making this. And, you know, you call that bias, whatever, but that's just the way of it. It's not nearly as strong as it used to be. So other than that, I think your list is pretty much spot on. Thanks a lot, Max. I think your comments are pretty good too. All right, Tagore, what's up, buddy? While on paper, this list makes sense. When it comes to Pug, utility and mobility are way less valuable, as most Pugs don't know how to use their utility well, and the mobility just end up with people pulling everything to the start of the dungeon when the tank dies, so we can wipe over and over again to the same trash bag. I definitely think you're underselling mobility in 5-man, but that does happen, and I don't think it has anything to do with mobility. It's just the mentality of people. But I definitely don't agree that most Pugs don't know how to use their utility well. I mean, some utility is so easy to use, you couldn't possibly use it wrong. Like, in fact, Demon Hunter's utility, you literally don't even have to use it. You just attack, and it uses it. So, yeah, those things are definitely oversimplifications, if you ask me. He says, in fact, most Pugs are all just all DPS warrior, as they don't do anything other than damage. He's like making a comparison, I guess. Therefore, all DPS are pretty much very similar to each other, as their DPS is pretty similar. Sure, but that's has literally nothing to do with this list. Like, you have to actually compare the things. You can't just make these silly generalizations. So anyway, Chris, what's up, buddy? Long time no see. Metro is racist against kitties. Not racist. That's not a race. They're just really bad. Andrioli says, good job, brother. Thanks a lot. I agree. Arthur Pessoa says, as an Unholy Death Knight, I am having such a great time this season. It's unplayable with Pugs, but since our tank is my IRL brother, we're synergizing very well. And in some cases, we're basically making big pulls disappear with 400 to 500k damage. It's all about synergy. My job is destroy gigantic pulls, and his is don't move ads away from my Death and Decay. Yeah, I bet it is. That's cool. Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Unholy Death Knight doesn't really say much about the tier list, but I'm sure it's fun if you can play it well. This guy Batterin says, reading this brings back old memories when me and my brother were waiting together in early Cataclysm. Okay. Yeah, I no longer live with him and my parents. World of Warcraft is more just a game for us. It's how we stay close with them. We're also returning players from Cata. I moved from my hometown and started playing again in Legion. That's cool. It's a cool little story there. All right, Kayla Love says, Feral feels bad, man. As they should. They're a very bad spec right now. Yolm Andrew says, I'd put Rogue above Demon Hunter and Windwalker above Rep Pally, but overall pretty accurate. I wouldn't. You know, we talked about this already. I definitely think, especially the Rogue, or the Rep versus Demon Hunter, or I'm sorry, the Ret versus Windwalker thing, just, you're going to struggle to convince me that Demon Hunter, that Windwalker's kit is better than Rep Pally's. If you guys think it is, let me know why, but I think Rep Pally's utility is just ridiculous right now. Their bulk is unbelievable, and even though their mobility is way worse than Monk's, I don't know, mobility is just not what it used to be in 5-mans, honestly. It's kind of really one-dimensional, so, you know, Horse is kind of all you need. It's just tough to use it. Anyway, yeah, right, Pally is ahead because they can save the team. Windwalker can't help at all. I agree, John. That's definitely the reason. Too nice to be me again says, well, they can save the team with AoE CC. You're talking about AoE stun, not CC, but they cannot save the team with that. That's not what that does. It helps, but it's never going to save the team. It only lasts at a maximum of 4 seconds, I think, right? So it's definitely not going to save anybody, but it could be useful. I'm sure it is a very useful spell. IMO is the same with Pally versus Monk, like it's with Absorbs versus damage reduction on healers. While Absorb saves small mistakes, damage reduction will overall be the stronger pick. Absorbs and damage reduction on healers. Who has damage reduction as healers? I don't understand that. Anyway, CC will outperform the healing that Pally can put up on higher you go in difficulty. I don't understand that. That doesn't really make any sense. I mean, it's an AoE stun, right? It can't even be used on bosses. So first of all, that's a very flawed comparison, since a lot of the danger is basically unCCable, unstunnable. It's not CC, but it's unstunnable. And, you know, AoE stun is very good. Definitely. It's great for interrupting dangerous casts. You know, there's a lot of casters in Battle for Azeroth, but I definitely think things like straight up physical immunities, full health heals with land hands, and really high burst healing on 3, however many targets that can crit, I think that's just way more useful. So, You should have brought up Ring. If there's ever going to be a comparison that was going to win out, somebody would have to convince me that Ring is invaluable again, and I don't think it is. So anyway, Energizing Bane. What's up, buddy? Vampiric Embrace is huge when you use a Void Erupt on a large pack. Huge burst, but small sustain. Yeah, that's the way I've seen it. Really big burst all of a sudden, but then it really falls off quick. So, but yeah, Shadow Utility sucks. Yeah, it's just really awkward, unfortunately. Okay, Brandon Salter, what's up? How's it going, buddy? I generally agree with your list here. I would only be able to provide anecdotal evidence for where I disagree. In the face of all your hard work, I feel like including that in the comments wouldn't add anything of value to the discussion. Oh, okay. Well, you're welcome to do it regardless, but anyway. Having said that, BM Hunter Tier 1, number 1 overall. Just kidding. I'm glad. Also, he says, thanks for your content. No problem, my friend. Sasha Vetter says, Monk should be rank 1. You think Monk is better than Rogue? Oh, I actually replied to this one. Don't forget, if you disagree with my rankings, explain why the pick would leapfrog the others with side-by-side comparisons, or feel free to re-tier the entire list to give your insight. Guess that's not happening. What a surprise. Anyway, MM wanted to talk about Shadow Priest a bit. I'm not saying that the spec is the best. I'd hope not. It's actually hard to play, and that's why most of the Priest people play with are mediocre at best. If played by a player that knows the class and has the traits that are actually top DPS on single target and most of the AoE packs, because they are not dependent on CDs. It is a consistent playstyle, but that's the same problem, right? When you don't have CDs, you're just less effective than the classes that do have CDs, right? So, I mean, you'd have to basically say that they do more damage than every other class in the game when they have their CDs, and I don't believe that for a second. So that's another problem with Shadow and another problem with Feral, especially. They basically don't have CDs, and even though they do very good consistent damage, it's not as valuable as other things. But Shadow is actually a very good damage dealing spec right now. It's among the top in the entire game for all PvE, but that's just not. I mean, that's one thing to think about, but it's just not everything. So anyway, I wanted to also mention that they have a trait that puts a magic absorb shield on them for 10 seconds when they use Fade. Yep, I'm more. I think I brought that up in the video, but maybe not. That can actually count for the defensive kit. Sort of. I'll give you, it can, but it's so niche. I mean, come on. Anyway, also the talent Body and Soul is the default choice for every priest because of the movement speed increase to the target they shield, helping utility. Right, but it was like, the thing was, it's like, you have to choose from a shitty utility. You know, there's like really bad choices to be made there. So even if that is the default choice, it's still really bad utility compared to other things. Anyway, on some weeks, the mind control is good as you can move mobs that are ranged, but not casters. I've never seen anybody mind control as a Shadow Priest, but obviously that's going to dramatically decrease your single target, your DPS in general, so I don't know. And the stamina buff is extremely good on high keys. The problem with the stamina buff is it's actually a detriment on some affixes, so it's like, it's still the worst. I think it's still the worst buff, right? I don't know. I think it's the worst buff. You can make a case for Arcane Intellect being the worst buff, but it's just, then that's just because people don't play a lot of casters anymore. But stamina is actually a detriment. It'd be better to not have stamina on some keys. So it's on some weeks. So it's like, okay, that's got to be remembered, right? Anyway, other than that, yes, they're definitely not the best on keys that are farmable for most of the players. And they start to really shine on keys above 19, as the World First dungeons done are showing. Most of the 23s, 24s are done with the Shadow Priest in the party, and they are always top DPS at the end, although the skill level required from them is high. So skill level, not something I'm considering. And again, you know, you're only worried about damage. This is just not what I do here. You know what I mean? Like, well, if you're doing a 24, I guess that's probably one of the only things you are worried about is damage. And that's why you see all this weird nonsense with warriors and you know, rogues and all this. So it's understandable, but that's not what this list is about, really. So anyway, this is probably the best comparison video you've done by far. You've done so far, though. Long-time subscriber and sadly missing most of your streams for the past few months. I always watch the replay. Hey, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate your kind words and your dedication to the channel over the years. Keep up the good work. You're an amazing entertainer. Oh, thanks for saying that, man. That's really kind that you say that. So, okay. Sorry, but this was a terrible comparison video, to be honest. So you'd have to explain a little bit more, right? Honesty only gets you so far, but it's definitely not a terrible comparison video. So let me see if you counter that. You probably won't. Anyway, Mads, what's up, buddy? How's it going? Man, how much work did you put into this? I remember replying. Probably upwards of 40 hours. I took an entire day off streaming. Yeah, so it's definitely more than 40 hours one way or the other. Spent a lot of time on this video. Anyway, the Flesh Weasel. To anyone who has never tried Enhanced Shaman, I highly recommend it. It is hands down the most fun class I've ever played, and my DPS is usually towards the top, and having highest DPS on the first two bosses of Heroic BOD. Well, obviously enhancement, mathematically it's just not it's not a top DPS spec right now. It was pretty good in Legion, but yeah, it's definitely not. So and they're definitely just worse than Ellie in terms of offense. So I don't know. I'm sure it's fun to play, and I wouldn't mind playing it. Actually, I've been trying to get some agi gear for my Shaman to try it, but realistically, it's just not going to be anything better than Ellie ever. So, Godless Fuckboy says, I just started playing it and I'm having a blast. That's what it should be about IMO. Not going to let their terrible design or toxic players kill my fun, not matter what. No matter what, I guess. Yeah, so I mean, hey, if you enjoy it, play it. That's all I could say for sure. But this is not about what the most enjoyable spec is. This is a tier list comparing all things side by side without any consideration into that kind of thing. So, all right, Kara says, Feral is so underrated, man. No, it's not. If you play it right, it's better than most ranged DPS. Based on what? Has way more to offer than Fury Arms. I could see that. Like I said, a lot of the reasons why Feral is where it is because it just can't win a competition against Bombkin, but it probably could win a competition against Warrior, right? Like, it might actually be better than Warrior, so... anyway, it's definitely not better than Holy or Frost, and there's no way it's better than Enhancement. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, to get one thing straight, it is by far the hardest spec in the game. Not just because you need perfect recourse management, combo points, and energy, and need to maintain bleeds, which have pandemic values, but it is the only spec that still has snapshotting, meaning that your dots which you applied while not being buffed need to be reapplied when you are buffed by any significant source, such as trinket procs or CDs. Is that true? Are we sure about that? I feel like that's not true, but maybe it is. I don't know about that. That's not anything I've heard about, but I definitely have been told that they're one of the hardest things to play in the game, and I'm sure that does contribute to why they're bad right now. Anyway, so if you play it right, Feral can be really good, especially in high keys and HP boosting affixes. Everything can be really good if you play it right. That's not what this is about. It's about comparing things side by side. So, hey, we got a couple replies. Joshua calls him a retard, and it says it doesn't snapshot anymore. I feel like that wouldn't be the case, right? The Real Boulder says, yeah, so you think Blood Talons and Tiger Fury, Trinket, etc. doesn't affect the bleed damage? Use your brain. So the way I understood it to be is that snapshotting was like a thing of the past. Like, it just doesn't exist in the game anymore, no matter what. I don't know why it would only exist for Feral and no one else. But now, if your strength or whatever, your agi increases while you have a bleed up, that bleeds damage also increases by that relevant amount. So if somebody knows anything about that, let me know why that's not the case. But, I mean, it definitely does affect bleed damage, right? When you use a DPS bonus, it makes the bleed do more damage, but you don't have to reapply the bleed to make that happen, right? That sounds like a bug if that's the case. So if somebody knows anything about that, let me know, but I don't really think that's true. Syiler, what's up, guys? Syiler says, Windwalker number 7. I mean, you got to remember, number 7 is still really good, right? Like, that's really... Anybody in Tier 1 and Tier 2 is extremely good. That's, like, top tier specs right now. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I definitely think Windwalker is number 7 overall. I could see them being a little bit higher. I probably could have moved them up above, like, Mage or something like that. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think they're definitely Tier 2. Anyway, okay, this is this guy again, Batteran92, the guy who said some weird things before. This is why you people should not listen to this rating and why this is far from true. Clearly not understanding what this video is about, which is a shame because I spent so much time trying to make it obvious. Like, how do people still not get it? Anyway, Ellie Shaman is better than Bombkin and Ret Pally because they have better utility and way more damage overall. Definitely don't think Ret Pally has way worse damage than Ellie. I could see, Ellie's very good damage, but I do think Ret is extremely good right now as well. It's just the single target where the splits start to come over. Anyway, they do good damage outside of CDs, while Bombkin and Ret do literally no damage outside of their 3-minute cooldowns. That's definitely false. I mean, obviously, I don't know much about Bombkin for sure, but Ret definitely false, right? I mean, I can do extremely good damage even without wings up, thanks to the Azerite traits and some of the procs and stuff. They definitely do really, really, really good damage during wings, but they definitely do really good damage without wings too. Windwalker Monk is also better than Ret Pally. They do way more damage, don't agree. Give extra 5% physical damage, which is good, yep. And Ring is just way too strong. So like I said earlier, if you're going to make a case for Windwalker being a Tier 1 spec, you'd have to give me a reason why Ring is very strong, which this guy didn't, so I don't know. Same with Shadow Priest. They are probably the strongest DPS class at the moment in Mythic Plus. That's funny because you know we just heard so much about warriors. I mean, if this was the case, why wouldn't be people would be running them in the MDI more, right? I think they're good. I think they're very good DPS, but that's it. They fucking suck at everything else. Anyway, yes, they do compete with outlaw rogues, and they do not have ramp up damage, as you say. With the setup, you should be running that is more Mind Seer heavy. We did see that recently on stream. A demon or a Shadow Priest doing like 50% of his damage with Mind Seer. So I guess that's not, there's no ramp involved in that, but we're not just talking about large scale AoE, are we? So anyway, their utility is not that bad either, and their mobility is pretty decent. Definitely disagree with both of those. Better than Shamans, actually. Their mobility is better than Shamans. I think you're going to have to talk to Absinthe about that, right? I don't know. I'd love to see, you know, those types of opinions. That was one of the reasons I stopped doing these comments, because I was hoping that people with conflicting opinions would conflict with each other so I can kind of see both sides of it. So, like, you know, Absinthe, like, clearly saying that Enhancement or Ellie Shamans actually got really good mobility. This guy's kind of saying the opposite. So I'd love to hear them compare each other's ideas. Their utility is not that bad, but it's definitely, it is bad. Like, compared to any other, pretty much every other spec, it's really bad. So anyway, I suggest you actually try out more classes and watch more high keys before making videos like this and giving out false information. Dude, fuck you, honestly. I'd recommend you listen to the fucking words said in the first minute of the video, okay? Like, I make it very, very clear what the purpose of this video is, where it's coming from, and my experience, and as such. I'm not going to watch somebody else play the game to be able to make my own opinion. That's just not what I do here, okay? So anyway, you can eat a dick with your ass, frankly. Anybody who says shit like this, I have fucking zero respect for. So anyway, +1 for the effort, at least, to try to help new beginners. Yep, good luck with that. Okay, anyway. Boat says, yeah, knew it was shit when third best DPS was Balanced Druid, lol, over Ellie Shaman or anything else, really. Balance is really good. I don't know, man. I guess, you know, I guess people are really high on Ellie right now, which is awesome to hear, because I've been high on Ellie for fucking 5 years now, and nobody else seemed to agree. So I'm really happy to hear this, that people are really good on Ellie right now. I wish this represented what I saw in game, because I still see very few Ellie Shamans. And like I said, you know, your priorities are different. You think damage is all that matters, then that makes Ellie better for sure. But I think Bombkin is way more well-rounded, and that's going to make them better key-to-key than just, you know, pure DPS output. Anyway, Joshua says, you don't know what literally means. I don't know where he said that, but yeah, obviously this guy's got some malfunction of the brain there, one way or the other. It's embarrassing, really. It's frustrating to deal with. Okay, Mads says, disliked on behalf of the Shadow Priest, Warriors, Enhanced, and Feral. Feel free. Anyway, Phoenix Phillip again. Feral Bulk is Demon Hunter level. Disagree. So the thing is, all they have is reduction, right? Demon Hunter, Rep Pally, these things have actual immunities. Immunities are just better. So I could see Feral being third best in terms of bulk in melee, but that they're definitely not as good as Demon Hunter, right? Anyway, Single and AoE are, again, Demon Hunter levels if you play Snapshot Dots. So somebody else brought up Snapshots. That's interesting. I don't know how that works, but they're definitely, single target is definitely nowhere near the top specs in melee, and their AoE is only propped up because bleeds can work really well on the large form AoE that we're seeing in Season 2. Best mobility in the game? Holy fuck. I mean, how could anybody even say that, right? I mean, I can't even imagine how they'd be better than, like, how could you even compare them to Monk? Monk has a freaking serpent kick, right? They fly like 40 yards across the map with a single ability. Anyway, has Roots, best single target spammable CC? Not really. Don't understand that. Anyway, has 3 stuns on demand. Do they really have 3 stuns? Either way, stuns are just so overlapped, like it's hard to justify a single target stun. If they had an AoE stun, we'd be talking. Off healing is insane, not anywhere near as good as Rep Pally's. Okay, anyway, let's see. Super Hugh says, Root isn't hard CC. It breaks quickly on damage, and you can only guarantee to insta-cast it after 5 combo point spenders. You can also only root 1 target. How is that good spammable CC? That's just a silly thing to even say. Root is not that at all. I don't understand that. Anyway, dots require a ramp up in a game mode that requires you to burst down mobs as fast as possible. I'm glad we understand that, right? Like, burst is extremely profitable in 5-mans, and they have no burst. So anyway, instant damage is always better. Yep, same issue with Affliction, sort of. Affliction, I wouldn't get into that. But anyway, Dacker says they also remove snapshotting in Cata. Yeah, there seems to be some disagreement with this. I don't know. Anyway, Blackhawk Uda, what's up? I also play Feral. I want to advocate for them too. That said, the argument that the video gave were extremely valid, especially in the glaring hole of a lack of an actual damage cooldown. Yeah, that's the biggest problem with Feral, is their DPS CD is the worst in the entire game. It's horrible. Anyway, I agree survivability as a whole, not from a damage reduction perspective, but including all parts, is probably the highest for DPS in the game. Well, what else is there? What do you mean survivability as a whole, damage reduction? So what are you saying? They have a really good self-healing? Is that what you're saying? This is news to me. So if you guys know more about this, let me know. But I definitely can't see how they'd be better than anybody with an immunity. And there's multiple classes with immunities. So solid damage reduction, high mobility. Yeah, you know, they're above average mobility, but still definitely the best I could see them being is 4th overall. I don't see how they would be better than any of the top 3. Increased melee range. It's not what it was in Legion with the Lufa thing, but it's still pretty good. High base speed. It's true, but I mean, like, rogues have this too, so self-healing, etc. So I don't know, I guess I don't know much about Feral's self-healing, but again, I can't imagine it being better than Demon Hunters, can't imagine it being better than Rogues, can't imagine it being better than Paladins, stuff like this. So anyway, the thing I find myself offering to the groups more than anything is the ability to be alive and require almost no assistance from the healer to do so. You should check out Demon Hunter. I think you would enjoy it. Anyway, yeah, Feral's okay, but it's just, again, just not better than Bombkin. I mean, those things are kind of true about Bombkin too, right? I do think Feral has slightly better survivability than Bombkin, better access to damage reduction, but I think Bombkin has, I think Bombkin has extremely good self-healing. So if Feral has at least as good as Bombkin, this would be news to me, and I would, like, again, it would be struggling to convince me of that. So anyway, Don Machiavelli, what's up? Tier 1 DPS list, of course there's one. Play what you want, do what you want, don't listen to these Raider IO bunch of idiots that select people like in a job interview. Perfect example of my words. Remember when there was no Raider IO bullshit and other stuff like this? We played Mythic Plus without it. It was way more fun and enjoyable. Now everyone is like, Mythic Plus in my job, meta or get the fuck out. Don't blame Blizzard for this. People that play the game went toxic mode and created stuff like this. Ta-da, my 5 cents. Gotcha. Well, I mean, that's sure, I guess has nothing to do with the tier list because that's not what this is about. You can play whatever you want. Feel free to play it, and you can be better. You know, like, you can make a Feral better than a Demon Hunter or a Rogue or something, fine. Go for it. If you want to do that, go for it. But still, this is a theory-based tier list. You know what I mean? This is not, has nothing to do with the individual playing the spec. So, okay, this looks like it's going to be an interesting one. Get some water here before we go into this one. Pills Zard says, Shadow on number 11, Raffle, all caps. Your opinion is, I guess, as much worth as a wet noodle. It's good. It's good grammar. Anyway, Paladin on number 4 is also very interesting. I agree. As a Shadow Priest main, I can tell you this. I'm still waiting for someone to out DPS me, in quotations. Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't know. People are so focused on DPS, it's kind of weird. Anyway, of course it happens on some rare occasions, but in general, Shadow just wrecks Demon Hunters and 9 out of 10 Rogues. Yeah, so a couple of people have said that in the list, but I was under the impression that, like, Outlaw Rogue was just de facto. If you do it right, Outlaw Rogue and Death Knight, Unholy Death Knight, will not be rivaled. So if you can tell me that Shadow is going to be even better than them, I don't know, man. It just doesn't seem viable. It doesn't seem real. I think it's a lot of anecdote, a lot of you're just better than the people you're playing with kind of thing. It's not really theory. It's not kind of in a vacuum, so... Shadow Priest is a very good damage healer, but again, that's where it ends. Perhaps they don't bring as much useful utility, but I'm tanky enough. You're definitely not as tanky as pretty much most of the ranged, and the utility they lack is a huge deal. Like, if you're going to bring a range, they have to do something very well, and I don't think Shadow does much well. I guess it's damage, but again, does Shadow really do better damage than, like, Ellie, or Mage? They do really good damage, man. I guess they do better damage than those specs, maybe on theory, but not that much more. So anyway, fun fact, as a Shadow Priest, 9 out of 10, the healer has the heal me the least of all in the group because of the self-healing provided by Vampiric Touch and Power Word Shield. Vampiric Touch and Power Word Shield, right. So yeah, I guess that helps, but in terms of actual damage reductions, you have the worst one, and it's horrible. It's hard to use. It makes your damage, like, it's just bad. So I don't know. I guess they have decent self-healing, but there's other range that have really good self-healing too. So even if the healer has to heal you the least, again, this is just an anecdote. It really has nothing to do with the theory, and I don't believe that they have any good actual defense right now. So anyway, as a Shadow Priest, I can do pretty big healing through the ability of Vampiric Embrace. You shouldn't underestimate this. It's not that I underestimate it. I just think it's worse than the Ellie Shaman version, and I think it's worse than the Rep Pally version for sure. And among all types of, defensive things, I definitely think it's one of the worst. I mean, there's not a lot, so it's kind of one of the best and one of the worst at the same time, but yeah, I think, you know, even an ability like Darkness is more valuable than this thing. But anyway, Shadow Priest got only one cooldown, Shadow Fiend, which isn't even huge. Shadow doesn't rely on CD. I can do big damage nonstop, right? But that's the problem. You're talking about burst DPS as the forefront of 5-mans. Without burst DPS, you're just kind of a weaker version. So even if your overall damage is really high, even if it's higher, it's not as important because you have less delete potential. It's something I used to call it all the time. You want that delete potential. You want all your CDs to line up very well with the potion, with Bloodlust, and just annihilate something. You want to see that massive burst, and I don't believe Shadow has that. I might be wrong. Anyway, skill is more important than gear, is more important than class. Something that has to be mentioned. No, it has nothing to do with this tier list. This tier list is assuming that all people, that the classes are played by equally skilled and equally geared. That has nothing to do with this tier list. I don't understand why people don't understand it. I guess it's like people don't, they've not seen other games where tier lists are more prevalent. You know, I kind of come from like a game background where there's like, other games have a lot of tier list type content where people rank them, and it's assumed that, you know, like nobody's going to be like, well, this thing's better because I saw a really good player playing it and he played it better than something else. Like, is that serious? Do you think that's actually part of this? Anyway, any class can do extremely well if the person who's playing is doing the right rotation and timing his CDs correctly. That's correct, but this is not about doing extremely well. This is about what's better, side by side, right? So if everybody plays to within 100th percentile, then what's best? And that's what the list is for. Anyway, knowing the dungeon, what to interrupt, how to handle mechanics, or cheese something is way more important. Again, nothing to do with the tier list. To all you people thinking of re-rolling Flavor of the Month, Get Good equals all classes have a Discord channel. Join them, read the pins, and ask questions. So I guess he's just like, he's really defensive because I'm saying bad things about his main. I'm sorry, man, I can't help you. This is, you know, I can't be worried about people getting defensive about their class. I'm not advocating anybody re-rolls from Shadow. If you really enjoy Shadow, it's really good in raids right now. Obviously, if you enjoy it in 5-mans too, keep playing it. Good luck. I will not be looking for them in any of my groups, but, you know, maybe there's some people out there that will. Anyway, one extra thing to mention. Some specs require you to be a certain combination of traits to be good. Others just require you to smash your head on the keyboard and be #1 in damage. Okay, as someone who plays all classes and specs since MOP, I'll trust myself more than this guy. So should all of you. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. People get really worked up about these. I guess I'm lucky that it didn't happen as often as it used to, but sure, if you think you know better than I do, I encourage you to make your own tier list. I'd love to hear it. The problem is nobody ever does that, right? This guy's basically saying my picks are bad, especially Shadow and maybe Paladin, but he offers no actual tier list himself. So if you're not willing to do that, then you should get the fuck out of here, man. You really should. Like, you're just wasting my time. It's embarrassing what you're doing here. You arguing about a single pick not being higher, but you're not willing to compare it even. So, you know, when you say Shadow Priest number 11, Raffle, well, you should be comparing it to number 10. At least explain to me why it's better than number 10. If you can't do that, then what are we even talking about here? You know what I mean? This is really frustrating. Anyway, okay, Despond, moving on. Despond, in terms of just damage, nearly anything is great. Seriously, Fury Warriors are awesome. And have you seen a BM Hunter with triple? Oh, yeah, these do really good damage. But again, DPS is like, it's at best 1/4 of the conversation for me. Okay, Max, Despond, yes. But damage alone gets you nowhere in Mythic Plus. Now, that's a little bit of a understatement for sure, but it's definitely, like I said, at best 1/4 of the conversation. Every class can bring damage. That would be my position too, that every class does pretty good damage, right? Anyway, you need more reasons than ideal damage to be considered a viable pick for high keys. I totally agree. I don't, you know, I guess for super high keys, maybe not, but for the keys that I'm doing, the keys I'm seeing people doing, the keys I'm aspiring to do, you definitely need more than just damage. Damage is important, though, that's for sure. Okay, slow. Wish they would balance out Demon Hunter. Just have too much cool and good shit in it while being easy to play. It does seem like they have an abundance of things and they're really simple at the same time. It's like, how are they so simple yet so effective? It's weird, right? Or they made their rotation interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I tried to play it. It was frankly really boring. Like, God, is it boring. They have no interactions. They don't have any procs or anything. It's weird. So, yeah, I could kind of agree. But it is weird how strong they are for such a thin rotation. All right, Cracky Lol. I would put both Assassination and Outlaw above Havoc without a flinch, and Windwalker above Bombkin because they both buff rogues, and the other kings of Mythic Plus. So again, that is not, you know, I'm not worried about the meta here. That's not what this is. This is not a approximation of the statistics that Raider.io calculates, you know? If that was the case, then obviously Assassination, then Rogue would be tier 1, number 1, but that's just not what this is, so. Windwalker above Bombkin, it's like, I guess, you know, I understand that because, I don't know. We've talked about this a lot, but I definitely think Windwalker is very comfortable in tier 2. And again, you know, being in the top 7, in the top 2 tiers is extremely good. You know what I mean? You can only bring 3 classes. So if I could bring 7, I would bring all of them. They're really good. Anyway, Rep Pally, worst mobility in the game. Shadow Priest says hello. I'm glad somebody agrees. But Rep Pally is, so mobility is probably actually worse on Shadow. I don't know if I said that. But thinking about it now, I definitely agree. Shadow Priest probably has the worst mobility. The thing is, Shadow Priest has no actual speed. They don't really have any speed buffs, but they do have some instant casts, right? Rep Pally's mobility is tough because if they're not in range, they're really bad. Like, if they're not in range, they're really struggling to keep up. If you don't have Horse up and you're not in range of the mob, you're just fucked. You're doing no damage. I mean, Judgment and the lights thing, the blade that comes up, those are actually really good for a little bit of range, but... yeah, I don't know. Anyway, okay, what's up? Body and Soul says Halo from the talent tree and wants you to stop being a pathological victim. What the fuck? All right. Anyway, yeah, Body and Soul, I guess, but it's just, again, compare Body and Soul to Blink, right? It's like really bad. Anyway, I don't play Shadow Priest, but having the talent for minimum movement over baseline pony is worse. Plus, Pally's have freedom. Shadow Priest has less mobility than Pally. It depends on what you consider mobility. Like I said, I consider mobility the access to damage on the move and the access to gap closing. So those things combine to be pretty bad for both, frankly. Rep Pally does have good access to damage even when they're out of range, thanks to Judgment and stuff. But without Horse, man, they are fucked. They really are, honestly. Shadow Priest isn't really ever going to get outpaced in a dungeon, but if they ever did need to close gaps quickly, they're among the worst. They're definitely probably the worst. So that's that. We read them all. An hour and 5 minutes, so definitely shorter than the other one, but I mean, we only had 70 some comments or something. 78. So it was good. Really enjoyed it. Maybe this video will get more people to comment. From now on, I will be actually responding to comments on this video properly. So if you have any things that you want to say on that, feel free. You can post it here too, whatever. Love to hear your comments. Love to hear a further detailed breakdown about some of the things we talked in this video about, you know, especially some of these hot topics. We saw a lot about, you know, a lot about rogues and demon hunters. I think this is kind of just moot. Like, I think it's very valid, beyond valid, what I have to say about these two specs. I don't, usually it's rare. People don't usually argue the top 3 or 4. When we did these in Legion, nobody ever really had anything to say in the top 3 or 4. Like, it was just assumed that, you know, Bombkin, Affliction Warlock, these things were just god tier. You know what I mean? So it's like, which one's 1 or 2? It kind of didn't matter. So that's kind of the way I feel about it right now. It's like, Demon Hunter is just kind of by default better because they're just better at more things. You know what I mean? Rogue is extremely good at 1 thing, maybe 2 things, but Demon Hunter is really good at all 4 things, and that's why they're number 1. Very balanced. Same with Bombkin, extremely well balanced. Rep Pally, extremely well balanced. Outside of mobility, extremely well balanced. So those are the 4 that are the top in my opinion because of that. But that's that. So let me know. If you guys have anything to say, let me know. But otherwise, we will see you guys in the next one. Yeah, probably not going to be doing, well, definitely not going to be doing healing tier list at this point. But Season 3 is fast approaching, so we'll reboot the tank tier list. And I hope that now that I made this, one of the big things that sucked about making this was that it took me like 20 hours just to write the script, you know, just to gather all my thoughts and do all the research. Now that I've kind of done the research and I already have the script written, I'm hoping that I can kind of just, you know, plug and play any changes that come in 8.2. It doesn't really look like there's going to be a lot of changes, so it would really be just reorganizing it based on the new affix set, you know, new Season 3 affix. So maybe we'll be able to pump this out earlier. That was really the biggest flaw with this, like I was saying earlier. This just came out way too late. I mean, this is already like 2-3 months into the tier. If this came out in the first month of the tier of the season, it would have been really good. I think a lot better. But yeah, I just kind of got bankrupted by the NCAA tournament, honestly. Like, people are like, oh, you got to choose your job or sports. And frankly, I just really love sports. So I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.